Research tells us that the most popular resolutions include our health, exercising more, eating better, eating less perhaps, taking time for self-care, and having less stress. One stress-inducing factor is drama in the workplace. Joining me live from Telluride, Colorado, is executive coach and the author of The Kid and the King, Shasheen Shah. Shasheen, welcome. So great to have you here.
Hi, Bonnie. It's so great to be here. What an awesome time to be out here.
So we know that unhappy, stressed out, discouraged employees result in less creativity, decreased productivity, and really can bring down the workplace environment. But you've got some great advice for us about how leaders can set themselves up for a drama-free 2022. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, look, at the end of the day, forget about, innovation, creativity. I mean, that's all the good corporate speak. And, that's what my clients would want to hear about from the company side. But I mean, it's just people at the end of the day. It's just you and I, we're parents, we're sons, we're daughters, we're cousins, we're grandkids, we're human beings on this planet. And, when I started looking in the world of business and hitting business outcomes, and as I was doing my consulting work, I thought, the strategy isn't the hard part. It's the people that are really challenging. And what I learned about my own self is that I wasn't alone in the fact that, I was getting triggered. And when I got triggered, I became less and less effective in how I was able to accomplish or not accomplish what it is that I wanted, whether it was being heard about a certain idea, conveying a message that I wanted people to get some understanding and some acknowledgement. And I just found myself challenged. And over time and over the years and through a lot of personal development work on my own and my own self-study, I discovered that, ultimately, if we can control our emotions and we can figure out how to manage our emotions, we can actually start to live better lives. And I figured, one of the lenses also that I had into the world was looking at my clients and some extraordinarily successful people, really bright people that were getting triggered by the same things, getting upset and, raging and getting frustrated about whatever it might be. And I think to myself, like, wow, you live this incredible life. You're so bright, you're so talented, and you seem to be just upset all the time. So what's that about? So I started looking at that through the lens of why not then say that the person at the end of the day that gets least triggered is the happiest. And if we translate that into business, right, they're going to be more productive, just more pleasant to be around, right?
Yeah, it makes life better for all of us. And you have some really great examples in your book, The Kid and the King. Of course, as an executive coach, you also have some steps that can help us remember how to go through this process. And I love the story you were telling me about how you came to this great acronym that, of course, helps us too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great to be able to talk about the Ocean Acronym here in Telluride, Colorado.
Oh, beautiful setting, by the way. Thank you for doing that just for us.
Yeah, you're welcome. I figured it would be a nice day to do it outside.
Gorgeous.
So, Ocean was a way, I've got to remember things, right? And that was the easiest way I could remember it. And it breaks down any situation into 5 key components. And so if you find yourself triggered, you find yourself in a place where you're just in an undesirable state, you want to break it down into these 5 questions. So the first letter of Ocean is O. And the question is, well, what did you observe? And in that is the idea that what I'm observing, what we want to actually address is what were the facts. So think Dragnet, just the facts, man.
Mm-hmm.
And that story that you were referencing was, when I was teaching skiing when I was younger and, an accident happened. It was a horrific accident. And, when there's millions of dollars at stake for a ski area and you're a witness to something that happened and you're an employee of that ski area, well, they want to make sure you get that right. So in the legal context, you had to be very, very precise. And so the first draft of my, incident report was like littered with all kinds of colorful descriptions. And, he was going really fast. And like, how did you know he was going that fast? How did you know? How did you know? How did you know what actually happened? And so it came down to, I saw a man going and skiing down the hill and he hit a tree.
Right.
That was about all I would say.
It takes a lot of discipline to cut out all the opinions and thoughts that you have based on your own experience and how somebody's dressed and how they're behaving. And and you already singled this guy out before the accident happened. So you already had some opinions about him. And then it takes a lot of discipline to cut all that out. And I think about, okay, you become a journalist, essentially. A good journalist would be just reporting the facts, right?
That's right. Very good. Great example,
So
right? So that is it. And who knew that lesson when I was like 19 years old would be the lesson that carried me through all the way through life. And that is, okay, so what did I observe is O. And then the C in Ocean is C, what did I conclude? And now here is the interesting piece of this. And this is where we bring in all of our preferences, all of our conditioning, all of our, if we grew up in a particular way, if we grew up in a particular area, if we grew up in there's a ton of factors that condition our experience to basically what we conclude about data that we observe. So right now, we can arguably say I'm sitting here and it's below freezing right now, but I'm in the sunshine. If you just came in from Florida, you would probably have a puffy on right now. But the observable fact is it's 20 degrees outside right now. It's 20 degrees. Well, 20 degrees is 20 degrees. My conclusion that I've derived sitting out in the sun is I could take off my jacket, sit here and look at you. If you just came in from Florida, it would be freezing, right? So my conclusions are derived from my conditioned past. If we go to E, we then realize that from what I concluded, I then have an emotional reaction. So let's just take a practical example. I'm driving along on the highway and all of a sudden someone cuts me off. Now, if I concluded that that person was being disrespectful, they weren't, they were reckless or things like that, the emotional reaction inside of me would become rage. It would be frustration. It would be anger. Road rage is a real thing. Why?
Sure.
Because we conclude that that person wasn't going according to the rules. They were doing something that put them in danger. It scares us. So that's the emotional reaction that we get. The A in Ocean stands for action. Well, what action did I take? What action did I take from that emotional place? Well, if I was driving along and someone cut me off and I concluded they were being reckless and they were being disrespectful to me, if I was a road rager, I would probably get really aggressive and maybe try to cut in front of him and try to play a little game with him and all of a sudden start taking on actions that were probably not connected to an outcome that I had for that day. So after we look at action, we then look at the net result. And so we ask ourselves like, well, did that action bring me closer to or farther away from my intended outcome? And here's where the rubber hits the road. What we find out again and again is that most people don't go through life with outcomes in mind. They don't wake up and have an outcome in mind. We wake up and we have expectations. The world should be a particular way. I have a particular point of view. And the moment we butt up against someone that may have a differing idea, we get frustrated, we get triggered, we conclude things based on our past experiences, we take actions that are not consistent with who we are, and then we're like, oh my God, I just did that. I mean, another great example is like with, in relationships, right? If you say the words and you can feel them like coming up to, they're like, don't say it, don't, you just said it, like, and you take an action that is going to just push you farther away.
Well, again, it's like the king when you describe in your book. We've got the kid in charge and the kid is reacting and the kid is trying to protect us and the kid wants to jump right in. But the king feels like more the parent who comes in and says, let's think about the outcome we want. And that sort of stops us in our tracks. We don't think about how we want this to end or how we can impact the way that this can result. So yeah, that's a huge idea. And I also like what you talked about when you're talking in the book about when you're coaching someone or someone's behaving somehow and they don't know how to respond, that would be a positive, healthy response. You say, think about what your hero would do. And that hero could be a real person or it could be a fictitious character. So describe that a little bit. What's our go-to when we're stuck in that fight, flight, freeze mentality?
Yeah. So think about it this way, and it's always really instructive. And it was for me when, imagine going into a situation where you're really triggered and you wish you would just kind of kept your cool or, you wish you didn't say that, or, you were up against someone bigger, stronger, whatever it might be, you were intimidated by them. The idea is to consider in the next situation, like, can you visualize, I'll always ask somebody, well, name a character that you respect, name a character that, embodies a sense of self-confidence and would navigate the world with some grace and ease. There's Gabriel Macht plays this guy on Suits, and he's this big shot lawyer, very kind-hearted person, but you wouldn't want to be on the other side. But he knows how to stand his ground, protect himself. He's just a class act. He's just a really kind of a cool cat, kind of he's a level-headed guy. And so when I have to go out on stage, or if I have to go into a new business meeting in which I'm walking into, some pretty substantially successful people and, a large corporation, I've got to just think about myself in that state and how would he respond? How would he show up? And, getting into that identity. And that's really the point of the book. The Kid and the King was really to juxtapose the fact that on one hand, I do know myself to be this thoughtful, caring, confident, loving, intelligent human being that can respond to anything in an effective way. And I also know myself to be someone that can overreact, get very insecure, get completely emotional, lose my mind, all in the same person. So it does get confusing when you're trying to figure out, well, what's going on here? Why is it? And that's why I wrote the book, honestly, is to end the confusion by organizing myself into two distinct identities, the kid and the king. And rather than trying to fight with this part of me, rather than try to squash this kid, I've actually gotten to know that part of me so well that I can anticipate the times and the circumstances, the kinds of people, the tonalities, the conversations, the topics that are going to bring that little kid right to the forefront and want to start barking like a dog or running away or feeling insecure or whatever it might be. And that, I think, is the goal, is to just allow the space for part of that to come in, meet it where it is, look at it, and just kind of move on and just think about what that king would do.
And you've told us, you give us some exercises where we can write down the things that our kid would do and the things that our king would do. Right. And you've also told us, it's a fantasy that we think that eventually that kid, we can just figure out how to get rid and lose that kid. But that kid's going to be always with us, as you point out in the book.
And I think that I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's the biggest fallacy. So, in my profession, it's not really popular to tell you like, well, welcome to the rest of your life. There's no quick fix. I can't cure this in 6 months or a year of coaching. I'm not going to give you a breakthrough weekend. I'm going to maybe give you an insight that might help you, but it's not going. I think the presumption, the sale that is made always is something's wrong with you. And if you just do this, you'll be fine. And the presumption of you'll be fine is you're never going to experience this. I think we want to believe that somehow the next time she says or he says, blah, 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 I'm not going to react that way. And what do? We invariably react that way.
We can hold our breath only so long. Right.
Right. Or we'll procrastinate, or we'll eat that, fudge in the fridge, or, talk about our addictions and all of that stuff. It's right there. So understanding, the hardest part about this conversation, I got to tell you, is crushing that side of us, controlling that side of us, putting discipline on top of that stuff works. That's the thing. It does work. You can push that beach ball down underneath your butt and like you can pretend that there's no beach ball, but that thing will pop up invariably unless you take the air out of that ball. And the book's attempt is to really help you take some of that air out of the ball, so when it does show up again, it doesn't come flying out uncontrollably. It's just like, oh yeah, there it is again.
Great visual. I love that. One of my takeaways too, well, you talk about the Hindu god Ganesh. I'd never heard about the Hindu god Ganesh. This is an elephant-headed fellow. I looked him up, and he places obstacles in your way. So remind me why this is a good thing.
Oh, God, right. So this is the other really interesting part. Like, all this information's out there. We have all this wisdom that's been there for years. And so Ganesh is, traditionally the remover of obstacles. So if I were going to go to a wedding right now, I would give a Ganesh to the couple and, bless them and may no obstacles come in your way. But the truth is, when you give that to someone in their new business, when you give that to them in a wedding ceremony, what you're actually saying is he's not only the remover of obstacles, but he is the one that puts those obstacles in your in your way, so that you can transcend them. So what you're actually sending somebody is, may Ganesh send you all these obstacles, and may you rely upon his guidance to help you step over and learn and transcend from those moments. So it's not wishing someone an obstacle-free life, but the ability to meet the inevitable obstacles that Ganesh will put in front of you. And then you can invoke Ganesh, you can call Ganesh, be like, what do you need me to do, buddy? But that's the spirit of obstacles, is that we're there to meet them, to grow from them, and then go on to the next obstacle. And so that's really what the context of life is going from one to the next. And I guess in the context of this book is the question, can we do that more gracefully? Can we do that more elegantly? Can we do that without having it to be so dramatic and intense? In fact, in the book, I kind of make a joke and just say, like, in some ways, every single time you hit that wall, there's actually no logical reason why you shouldn't be able to go to the store, buy yourself a birthday cake, stick a candle in it, light it, and just wish yourself happy birthday because I'm about to grow and take it to the next level. It is truly that opportunity. And if you look at all the religious texts, all the philosophical texts, they all talk about this life and this journey in life as meeting one after another after another. And so
growing.
Again, and we don't like being uncomfortable as a culture.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what we do to ourselves. We've got more people on medications than we've ever had in the world. Addictions are through the roof. Internet, porn, whatever you want to call it, it's all out there, and it all wants to just distract us from being with ourselves.
Well, being with ourselves, it's a great segue into you live and thrive in some of the most beautiful places in the Southwest and all over the world. I think we have a picture of you being on Mount Kilimanjaro. There you are, taking this enormous trek. And so I know that nature is very important to you, and you talk to nature and the value of nature and what you find there when you're dealing with people and trying to help people get grounded. So tell us a little bit about that. What does nature mean to you?
I don't know if I've always been drawn to it. I would say it right sizes me. It reveals a power greater than myself. I wouldn't call myself a religious person, but a deeply spiritual person, and looking at just the interconnectedness and the perfectness of how nature works. Staring up at the sky. This morning, I was up on a hike, in the dark, and the moon was setting, and you take a moment and you take this natural environment, this order, and the trees that are growing, and the mountains that were created, this big giant chunk of granite in front of me, and the intricacies of a snowflake, or the beautiful colors of the sky, or forget any animal in the animal kingdom, and it just, I don't know, it just right-sized me. So as I think about all of my needs, wants, desires, and my concerns, and my all the things that consume my brain, the moment I go outside, it does give me an opportunity to just kind of pause, breathe, reflect, and just put things in perspective. And I've just found it really useful. And it's not only just nature for me, but the physical activity outside. So there's something energetically when I go outside and I'm active and I'm moving my body and letting my brain go through its machinations every single day, and all of it's like it's going through these lists and thoughts and fascinations and hallucinations about people being mad at me, and delusions of grandeur, and what all kinds of things that are going on. So I'm walking and I'm hiking and I'm going through. It's just some of that stuff processes out. And then you look around, you take a deep breath, and wow, somehow it just makes life a little bit more enjoyable.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. And helps set the reset button. And you've talked about nature, and we've been talking earlier about the miracles that are all around us. And nature provides a chance to remember that, a chance to experience that. And I love that in your book you talk about not a visioning board, but a miracle board.
Yeah. Wow. So now we go into the woo-woo of Shasheen, where we go into the esoteric, right?
That's your next book, the woo-woo of Shasheen.
It is the next book. And I will say this, the miracle board was an idea that came from a woman that I had interviewed years ago. And, she basically, and when I asked her the question, like, what's next? She said, Shasheen, I just don't have the creativity to answer that question. And I was like,
Wait a minute, Shasheen. You're not doing that with the Texas accent,
oh, it
right?
was Dallas, Texas.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah, right?
It was on Turtle Creek Drive. And that was the first time I'd ever really seen Texas. Like really, I was a New Yorker. I was, really young. And here's Trisha Wilson looking at me. She's like, Shasheen, I just don't have the creativity to answer that question.
Now, there
And
you
I
go.
and I dumbfounded. I mean, I was just dumbfounded. I couldn't believe that. Like, here's this really successful woman, and I'm asking her, what about her goals, and what is she doing for this next year? And she just said, you show up with a smile on your face, you do a good job, and when you mess up, you clean it up. Don't cheat anybody. And she said, just keep that smile on your face. She's like, you know what? The world has an interesting way of working itself out. And I remember hearing that going like, wow, like what an interesting concept. And so this idea of the miracle board evolved. And my buddy Matthew Ferry was like, forget these vision boards. This is when The Secret was going on. It's like, it's just shallow. It's like, why don't we just start basically utilizing this thing that they're talking about, this reticular activating system in our brain that says, wow, if I want to go drive a red Porsche, go to the Porsche store and drive a red Porsche. Next thing you know, you're going to see red Porsches everywhere. Great. So we just said, well, what if every single day we looked at the world and said, well, what's the unexpected good fortune that happened today? What happened today that was unexpected and good? Today, it was honestly, I had no idea the moon was going to be in the size that it was. And as I'm walking up the hill, it was going right down and it illuminated the entire path. And I just sat there in awe. If you're on my Instagram at Shasheen, you'll see it today. And it was just unbelievable. The connectivity that happens in the world that's unexpected and good, that we could have never planned for that. That wasn't within our five sensory experience and our thought or the creativity to be able to answer that in that way. And so by being able to just simply look at the world through the lens and prepare ourselves to be able to receive, and I think that's the key. If we do develop emotional mastery, if we're not consumed with our own needs, wants, and desires, if we're not upset and frustrated, if we're not grumping about the world, if we're not frustrated about the political situation, if we're not complaining about the weather or doing whatever it is that consumes us, and we can just ground ourselves, suddenly the world has a really interesting way of revealing itself. And the more we can start looking at that and acknowledging it, the more we see that unexpected good fortune, the better I think I feel as I look at the world as a caring and loving and exciting and interesting place. And I think it makes it really fun to live this world this way.
Beautiful ideas, and you're a great example for us. Thank you so much for being on Zonie Living. And congratulations on your book. It's a great read, guys. Shasheen Shah's new book is The Kid and the King. It's out now in hard copy and audiobook. Look for it on Amazon. It's a fantastic read about developing emotional mastery, as we just heard, understanding why we react the way we do, how we sabotage ourselves, and how we can change our thoughts and improve our lives. Great listen to while you're driving to your next outdoor adventure. It's all about preparing for your best new year ever. Be safe, be well, be drama-free, notice miracles. I'm Bonnie Stevens.